Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me for this video where I'm going to essentially live edit a podcast episode. I'm going to kind of take you through my entire process, and then you'll see exactly what I do in order to get one of my podcast episodes production ready. So the first thing I do is I send off my episodes for edit. Uh, so I will record two separate tracks, one for me and one for my guest. I will take those two tracks and I will send them to an editor that I've been working with. I found him on Fiverr, and he just does great work. So I will send them off to him, and then he will send me a completed episode, a single file that's been kind of cleaned up. He'll add the sponsor spots for me if I have them ready, and a few other things. So we'll be editing the Evan Calkins episode today. So um, I use Audacity, which you can kind of see in the background here. This is on my Windows machine. I'm not entirely happy with Audacity for a few reasons. I don't have a lot of things that I do when I'm putting together my own podcast episodes because all the heavy lifting is done by David, my editor. Um, but I want the things that I do to be easy. So I don't think Audacity is the easiest thing to use. It is free. It's like super ugly though. My friend who's an audio engineer recommends Pro Tools. The show's about to go on a couple of weeks hiatus once I finish up these episodes, and I think I'm going to take those few weeks to learn Pro Tools, just to do a few simple tasks. So um, if I go over into my browser, I've got the tabs that I use most across the top here. So Libsyn, let me zoom in for you so you could see this. Libsyn is where I host my audio. I love Libsyn. They specialize in audio hosting, so they make it very easy to use. They've got the built-in stats, and I pay about $20 a month to host my episodes. You get an upload limit per month, and then I get access to advanced stats. Music for Makers is where I find my music. I'm a pro member of Music for Makers, and he releases a new track every week. So I like to come here sometimes and just see what different things he has available. I try not to change the music too much in one season. I like the consistency, but I really haven't been happy with the music that I've been using because it's not a seamless loop. And Audacity, in my opinion, doesn't make it very easy for me to like kind of cut where a good loop ends. So if you're listening carefully to previous episodes in season 4, you might notice that the music like weirdly stops. So I have found a new song called Petunia that I really like, that I'm going to add in for the last 4 episodes of the season. Up here, I have Rev. So something that I introduced in season 4 was transcripts. So what I will do, and I'm gonna actually do this now because I need to get the transcripts for these last few episodes, is I'm going to upload the last few episodes and get the transcripts for them. So uh, Evan, Stacy, and Thomas, part 1. Thomas Umstat did a bonus episode for Patreon people that I will release in conjunction with the episode. That'll be right before the end of the season. Becca Rice is closing out the season. I'm still waiting on that one. So I'm going to open these. They'll get uploaded. Rev charges $1 a minute, and then they round up to the next minute. So this is going to cost me 114 bucks to get these 3 transcribed. I think transcriptions are really important. A lot of my sponsor money goes towards transcriptions and editing, so that's the importance of having my sponsors. Well, I'll call it last 4, even though it's last 3. When you create a new order with Rev, this is one of the few, maybe like 3 places I actually have my credit card on file with them because I use them so often. I place the order, and then they ask for a glossary, right? So um, I'm going to add some common terms that I know show up in the episode. All right, so with that submitted, they say it takes 24 hours, but it usually takes a lot less than that. I probably won't have the transcript by the end of this video, though, so I'll just kind of talk through my process there. One thing I don't do, and this is to save a little bit of money, but also because I really don't need to do it, is I don't include the bumpers in the transcript. I add them later. So the bumpers are what comes before and after the episode. And I usually just take a few minutes or a minute maybe to introduce the episode and then wrap up the episode. And I like to type that out because I like to read it and make sure it's crisp and things like that. I have not prepared that, so I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm recording on my Windows machine. I like to use the app Ulysses for my transcripts, which is Mac and iOS only. It's very clean. It supports Markdown, and you can easily export to HTML, which is what I will do to upload it to my website. So, but for now, I will just use Visual Studio Code. Bump up the size for you guys. So I always like to start off with the same thing. Hey, everybody. All right, so with that script created, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to Audacity, and I'm going to record the, well, first what I'm going to do is I grabbed that file, that music Petunia, so I'm going to drop that in as the first track in the episode. I'll play it back just to make sure it sounds okay. So it's a little bit loud. I want to make sure that it's not like too loud. So I will turn it down so it's just playing over me. And then I will, based on how long the intro takes and things like that, I will make sure to cut and fade it. But first, I'm going to need to add the actual recordings. So that's the first track. That's the underlying music. That's the music that'll be used at both the top and bottom of the show to kind of play it in and out. And then I'm going to add a new track. I'm going to do a mono track. This microphone feeds in stereo only from the left, but if you add a mono track, it mixes it to both sides. I'm not doing any like crazy sound effects or anything like that. I'm just doing a voiceover, so a mono track is perfectly fine for that. I'm going to rewind the play bar here. This is the other thing. You have to set the cursor to where you want to speak. It doesn't just kind of grab the latest spot, which is very annoying to me, but that's neither here nor there. So I've got this up. I'm going to, let me reduce this window size so I don't lose my script here. You can see that there's a lot of stuff going on. I have a 32-inch monitor, and it's just like, sometimes I feel like it's not enough. Sometimes I feel like I need a bigger screen. All right, so let's go. Hopefully I'll get this in one take. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, my guest is Evan Calkins from Hoban Press. I was really excited to talk to Evan because he does something that's very interesting to me: letterpress. He creates fantastic looking business cards and stationery, and he even did my cards, which I'll be sure to link in the show notes. We'll talk about what it's like doing a highly specialized thing in the real world, a physical product. But first, a word from our sponsors. All right, so that was pretty good. It looks a little bit quiet on this line, you might notice. So we'll see how it looks. So I'm just listening back to make sure everything sounds okay, that there's no drops uh in the audio, and it's loud enough. I want to make sure it's loud enough too. All right, so that sounded really good. I like the way that sounded. Now this is a bit of a simplified process because I sent my editor the sponsor spots too, including the mid roll. So I can just drop the episode into Audacity. It's going to process that, and then I need to select the moving tool. That's another annoyance here. I can't just grab a track and slide it over. So I've grabbed the moving tool. I'm going to zoom in, which is not this. I'm going to zoom in. Control 1, so I'll press that a couple more times. And now I'll make sure that the transition is good. Alright, so I've already pre-listened to this track. Pre-listened? I've already listened to this track to make sure it sounds good. The only trouble is now I'm not quite sure where exactly the sponsor spot ends. Alright, that's actually pretty perfect. So what I'm going to do now is add a fade out. I've actually I disabled all the plugins. Because I was like trying to figure something out. It was very annoying. All the plugins are now enabled, so fade out. I'll grab that. So I need to actually, right. I need to select the audio and then add the fade out effect. So now this should start to fade out. Turn the gain on this track down a little bit because I'm hearing a little bit of clipping. And I don't know if my editor could fix that or not. The other thing that I could do here is try to find the mid-roll. He didn't tell me where he added the mid-roll. But that's okay, because it's just going to be a straight-up read of the mid-roll. So the last thing I'll do now is come over here to the end of the episode. At the end of the episode, first of all, I need to write the outro. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. I always make sure to thank my guest. So just a little bit of a thank you to the guest. Then I reiterate my sponsors again, and I'm actually going to grab. I'm going to grab that text from the transcript of the last episode because that's always the same. Thanks again to our sponsors. So I'll go ahead and copy this. So you might notice that all of my sponsor links have buildpodcast.net in it. That's just it. I feel that it makes it easier for the audience to remember. They just need to remember one part of the URL. And then I can also add my own UTM source and campaign stuff to the end of that URL so that my sponsors know where the traffic's coming from. I can also track clicks this way to see how effective each campaign is, so I can take some information back to my sponsors and say like, hey, I noticed that when sponsors do this, that works really well. When they do this, it doesn't necessarily work. That's just I want to make sure that you get the most the most ROI for your money. And then so for all the show notes, please rate and review us. And then I've been pushing my Patreon here. So finally, I am going to reword this a little bit. Finally, if you like the show and want to support us directly, head over to patreon.com/howibuiltit. We have lots of great perks for backers. And right now, you can vote on the official t-shirt. You can support the show for as little as $1 a month if you pledge, I should say. $10 a month, you'll get that shirt for free. All right, cool. So that is the ending bumper. So now what I will do is I'll head back over here. And the thing I need to do is find the end of the episode and cut out. I always sign off at the end of the episode, and that's for my patrons so that it just doesn't abruptly end. I like to give them kind of the final version. All right, so that's here. Cut this. I'll remember that he mentioned pop culture references. I will drop that track down here again. So here's another annoyance, is I drop the track and it doesn't go where the cursor is, it drops it at the beginning. So now I have to drag it all the way over here and then zoom in. And now, well, it's a pretty slow build anyway. Drop that down to wherever this was. All right, so I'm all queued up and ready to go here. Fantastic. Thanks again to Evan for joining me today. It was incredibly interesting to hear about how he got his equipment and his start. Letterpress is tricky business, and he does it really well. Be sure to check out his work at hobancards.com. And thanks again to our sponsors. Make sure to check out Liquid Web for managed WordPress hosting. I use them on all of my important sites because they are that good. They're over at buildpodcast.net/liquid, and they'll give you 50% off your first 2 months just for being a listener. If you want to save your clients or yourself money through recovered abandoned carts, check out Jilt. They're over at buildpodcast.net/Jilt. And finally, be sure to check out WordSesh. WordSesh is an incredibly affordable 12-hour online conference with some of the biggest thought leaders in WordPress. Get your tickets at buildpodcast.net/WordSesh. For all of the show notes, head over to howibuilt.it/78. If you like the show, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review. It helps people discover the show. And finally, if you like the show and you want to support it directly, head over to patreon.com/howibuiltit. We have lots of great perks for backers, and right now you can vote on the official How I Built It t-shirt. You can support the show for as little as $1 a month, and if you pledge $10 a month, you'll get that shirt for free. That's over at patreon.com/howibuiltit. And until next time, get out there and build something. All right. Get out there. Awesome. So I'm going to let the music run for a few extra seconds while it fades out. No, right here looks okay. So I will cut that, and then I will add the fade out effect starting here, and I will let it fade out. All right, so that's the whole episode. I'm gonna go ahead and save this in How I Built It, episodes season 4, and this will be last S4 last 4. Alrighty. So the project is saving. You can see that I don't have that many tracks, right? I've talked to people who have way more than this. But this is a pretty cut and dry thing. I add the bumpers, I have the episode, and then I will export it as an MP3. So I'll go to export. I'll go to export as MP3, which again, a little bit of an annoyance is I had to get a plugin to export as an MP3 in Audacity. I don't understand why, but hey. I like to name all my episodes with the number and then the guest name for the most part. So 78-Evan-Calkins. I'll save that. And then the episode will export. So while this is going on, the episode is exporting. My next steps here, and I won't bore you with that stuff, is to upload it to Libsyn, grab the MP3 URL, and then come over to my website and create a new post. I'll add the title, I'll add a description and the show notes. I'll drop the media URL in here. I'm using PowerPress by Blueberry as my plugin. I created my own add-on to associate sponsors and transcripts, which are their own custom post types. I will add the requisite featured image tags and categories, and then I'll schedule it. I always schedule my episodes for 3 a.m. on Tuesday. I picked 3 a.m. somewhat arbitrarily at first, and then I noticed that, I got generally pretty good stats. That's midnight on the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast. But in general, I've been pretty happy with that. So that is the whole process from choosing music and getting the transcripts done to editing. The last thing I'll do for each episode is set up a social jukebox queue um, that will automatically tweet quotes from the episode. I create one big image from Canva, and then the rest I just pull quotes from the transcript. I have about 15 of those tweets per episode going out each week, and Social Jukebox makes it really easy for me to schedule each cue and copy and move tweets. So that's why I continue to use that. I use Social Web Suite for the rest of my social automation. So that's it for my podcast process. This was, well, let's see, we're coming up on a half hour, which is pretty long. I'll cut down the boring parts where I can. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if it is worth doing another video about a specific thing, I'll certainly do that. Or if you want to see some other aspect of my podcast process, let me know too. So until then, get out there and build something.